Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk a little more about the consciousness, but I think in the next ones, I'm going to go back talking a little bit more about holistic way of living, because I think that's going to be more and more important. Practical off ramping from this matrix way of life into a new way of life, decentralized. Uh, and I'm not going to get into this too much, but just wanted to say that I'm going to speak a little more about the actual practical steps that you can take to start creating your own uh, realm, because that's what it takes. You have to create your own realm here in order to have this reality enjoyable and play this game as it's meant to be played. Okay. um, and I'm not utopian type of believer, I suppose. I don't believe in utopia, not, and I don't believe in utopia because I can see that there are different types of energies here, and that one is so-called disorganized energy, which is like a pure randomness, and then you have the organized energy. Sometimes people call it orgon. That is actually what organizes everything. But orgon is a very deep uh, level of organized randomness, because randomness, they have, every level of randomness has its own order. What seems to be random at superficial level is perfectly organized at a deeper level, and at the deepest level, where you would consider to be the most chaotic reality, or the way we experience randomness or entropy is fear. That's the way we experience it. At that deepest point of fear, there is order, and that is the true deepest energy of orgon. And we as people have to organize that deep chaos energy, or as men rather, through courage and through sitting with that fear of energy, transmuting it until it's not. That's the first order of business. Before we commence anything else, energy first. Okay. um, what is being done right now for like a lot of years, and societies that's been built, you see, the countries itself is not a problem, the variety is not a problem. you know Sometimes people think that, okay, the problem is that we have to make everybody homogeneous, so then we're not going to have conflict. No, the variety is not the problem. The country, the color, the everything is not the problem. What is the problem, and this is what I really want to talk about in this video, is the identification with one or the other. Another word for it would be the like addiction, and desire to protect that identity as if it's threatened, as if it's like, if I'm uh, and if I'm this type of person, then my way of life is threatened if there's somebody else is there, like socialist, communist, or capitalist, and whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter that socialism, capitalism, communism, fascism, all of these aspects, all of these ideologies already exist. They're not in conflict with one another. They are already exist in appropriate uh, areas, and they need to be let be in appropriate areas. And you see, and everybody has a place in the world, no matter what kind of identification you have. And you cannot destroy socialism or even communism, because communism is a community. Your family is communism. Everybody shares everything, right? That's communism. You have your friend circle, that's socialism. You do your business, you're trying to accrue wealth, that's capitalism. If you try to produce something, if you try to build something, you have to have protocols and efficiency, that's fascism. You see that all of these facets already exist as a part of our consciousness, but we pick one and say, "Oh, that's me, and I'm going to fight for it." And then and then you try to make everybody fit with that. So the problem I'm trying to say is that everything has its proper place. The idea is we have to put everything in the proper place, but we won't be able to put everything in the proper place until we have the consciousness that is arranged in such way. So this is why my work is about organizing consciousness first within myself and speaking with somebody else, so they could have their consciousness organized as well on all levels: the soul, the mind, and the body. And that, remember I mentioned that everything starts with the deepest point of chaos, deepest point of randomness, where the organization needs to happen, and people call it God. God is that principle of organization, that everything you see in nature organized in a perfect way, not created by thought. That's something you can consider. So look, that everything that's been created by thought is artificial. Everything is created by this principle is natural. Okay? And they're not even that, the natural and artificial, or not nature and technology, they're not intrinsically a problem to one another if they are put in the right order and right way. Because technology is necessary, just like, for example, in order for you to go into the environment where naturally is life threatening, you got to create this suit, right? So there's nothing wrong with technology. Um, your brain is technology, right? Your heart is nature. Well, so by identifying the root cause of disorder, and why do we have the society that is structured in such way, and why do we have people suffering and in pain over their identity, and that identity is completely maybe completely erroneous, or all ego is erroneous. All ego is a structure that um, is built to cope with the reality of mortality, pain, suffering, and so on. It's built to cope with that. So this is where the technology and technical aspects are actually invading the place where they're not supposed to exist. Okay, I don't want to ramble about it too much. I'm just going to go straight to the point. Okay? So, I mentioned a little bit in the previous video, um, every hero used to be a villain. And I talked about this heart of coal and the heart of diamond, and how you need to have a heart of coal in order to get the heart of diamond. What is this heart of coal? What is the heart of diamond? I would say the heart of coal is those beliefs that we create in order to cope with the reality of existence. And those beliefs are all lies, because we don't need to cope with that in this type of way. We have to grow as consciousness. We have to grow that diamond as the challenge arises. we have choice whether we're gonna go the dark way or the the light way. It really is like that. It's a direction. There's no middle. You see, the wheel cannot turn in one direction and the same direction and an opposite direction at the same time. It's either one direction, you see. And so those energies, it's really about the flow of energy. When they flow in the correct direction, everything is in order. Okay? I feel like I need to be a little bit more concrete than that. So, okay, so we have the society that is an image of the ego structures within ourselves. And in previous video, I talked about how ego is basically a virtual body that has been created that's trying to survive. Okay, this is why it's so difficult to let that go, because it's a form of um, um, it's a form of dying, but it's not really dying. It's a form of transforming. Because in this world, because this reality already produces 50% that disorganized energy and 50% organized energy, we have to figure out what we're going to do with that 50% disorganized energy. How do we organize that disorganized energy? And in the process, as we're doing that, we are creating our desires, actually creating our desires in a correct order, correct way. Okay? And so that is the video game. That is the game that we're playing. So there is a code of life that you can live on this planet in a harmony. You're not gonna be able to delete all of the disorganized energy or negative energy, as people call it. It's going to be here. However, if you structure yourself as consciousness in a correct order, you'll be able to transmute all of that, and not only that, you will use that as an inspiration for the creation, as a catalyst to create. Because if there's no disorganized energy, you don't need to take that energy and organize it, right? So it's almost like if there's no ink, you cannot paint anything, right? So that disorganized energy is great for that. That's what it's supposed to be used for. Okay? If everything would be perfectly already organized, there would be no need to create, because everything would be perfect, right? And so, but there's a way to go wrong with this energy, and instead of trying to use it to create, you use it, you create coping mechanisms, which is that ego, which is that virtual body that is not real. It's basically, like I explained in the previous video, it's the faculty of the brain being applied onto idea, the idea that is incorrect. And now this idea is at the source. There's energy that is disorganized at the source. There's a fear, there's pain, and then there's this erroneous belief, and then there's a whole system of survival put on top of that. See? So now we have a bit of a problem, because we use the intellect to cope with the situation rather than transmute that energy. And so that pain that is at the source, behind that fear, yeah, you better go, because it's inappropriate to disturb my videos. All right. What was it talking about? Yes. So the structure of the ego formation. Um, okay. So the thing is that if we already went to that direction and we have created that ego, now we have to transform that belief that is incorrect into the truth that is correct, from coal to diamond, right? Um, and this is actually the growth of consciousness. This is what some people may even call a real soul, that you are actually building the soul, uh, that you don't yet have a soul until you have built it. Um, and in that sense, if you want to describe that diamond as a soul and the coal as ego, okay? Now, why do you need that diamond here? Because diamond diffracts the energy back into the original light source energy, okay? What does that mean? That means that you're capable now to use that negative energy that exists in this reality and organize it, okay? You're becoming the organizing factor of that energy. Now you're able to live in this reality. Okay, get out. You have to get out. That's right. Okay. Sorry about that. For some reason, chickens are um, disturbing my videos. Anyway, what was I saying? Something important. Right, that structure. Coal, diamond, ego, soul. This type of identity is is quite interesting because some people say, well, there is no me, right? And some people say, well, I feel it that there is me, right? But that me could be a belief that's been protected by the brain system to survive. So that's you identify with the ego. But if you transmute that, if you alchemize that, then there's this diamond. Now you have a different type of identity. Now that identity is based on truth. Okay? And so, in my observation of consciousness as I'm looking at it, um, there's absolutely is you, that crystal, that diamond that's been shaped out of that carbon life form into the crystal life form, is you. But you see that you is no longer pain pleasure based, because the call you was trying to always get that hit, get that fix of something. And that's why you were doing things, just to satisfy that uh, ego desire, which is, I call it ego tantrum. That's not your soul desire. But now that you have transmuted that, presumably, you have a different identity that is based on truth. Okay? The way things work, the way things are. Um, and some people call it that this is how you discover immortality. Because that identity does not ask you to go and get it a fix. Okay? That identity is asking you to express the joy that it is, that energy that it is. It's asking you to do something, create something, play with it. That's what it's asking. That identity is no longer has the same type of desires. Sorry, give me a little second. Sorry about that. Now, um, right, that identity wants um wants different things, and so now as that identity wants to fulfill soul desires rather than ego tantrums. Okay, one of it is really what would you call it? Self-centered or ego-centered, and another one is soul-centered. But there is an identity there. Okay, this is why I don't want to say that there is no you, like sometimes people do, because there seems to be there seems to be you. There seems to be you, and but the sensation, it wasn't like before. Before it was like, if you try to be you and just sit with yourself. Before maybe it was this anxiety, this angst is like, go do something, or some discomfort. That's what you would experience yourself as. So you always just move, move, move to satisfy um, those ego desires, right? But when you sit with it and then it refuses to satisfy those desires, those ego tantrums, and you find something else that could potentially transform that, which is what? Your awareness and your attention. That's where you start. And when you feel these processes happening inside of you, these alchemical processes, you do feel like that sensation that you would use to identify as yourself is no longer the same. It becomes more like it becomes delicious. That's what it becomes. It becomes something that you like to be yourself, because we all like to be our true selves, but we don't like to be our fake selves. So, and the only path, it seems to me, is simple, full attention to where that is, right? Because that pain, for example, is producing fear, and that fear is producing anxiety, and that anxiety produces the logic of what you need to do next. So therefore, you don't have a free will. But when you say, okay, hold on a second, I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna turn on it, and instead of um, you know, trying to externally to pacify it, I'm gonna try to put all my attention there where it is. Because really, that thing, that pain around which you build all of those beliefs to cope with the reality of that pain or pressure, I have to say that there's pain or pressure. There's two types of problems. There's a masculine and a feminine ego, okay? Um, and so the pressure, the solution to pressure is actually, you know, love, and solution to pain is actually uh, power or surrender and courage, okay? Because it takes courage to face the pain, and it takes surrender to let go of that pressure. So pain is like a fire, and then pressure is like a pressure, right? And so you need those two in order to make the diamond out of that coal that you have. This is why the physics is actually showing you the process that is happens with metaphysics, with your consciousness, because like I said, consciousness cannot create anything else besides itself. So it always gives you clues. The real physics, the real science always gives you clues about your consciousness. So okay, so let's just go straight to it. And as you do that, as you go directly to the source of it and you give attention, because that's what it's really asking you. It's not asking you go there and give me, drugs, or go there and give me some other superficial satisfaction to it, right? Because it's not your body asking for it. It's this uh, structure, okay? Now, but if you don't go that way and you give attention instead, you go and give attention exactly what it is, then if you give full attention to it, it goes away. And instead, where there was a pain or pressure, now there is either bliss or peace. And so now you identify yourself with bliss and peace. Okay? Um, and now you have a different problem. Now, what you're going to do with it? You see what you're going to do with it. And so this is why the movement is different. The entire motivational system before was different. This is why after you start burning the coal, tuning into a diamond, your motivational system will change. Your brain will be rewired over time to this is why this period sometimes people may experience something like, well, um, like meaninglessness, or you don't want to do anything, what's the point, and so on and so on. But it's just a phase. Your brain is being rewired to a different motivational system. Okay? The system that is taking care of the body still has to remain, but the system that's been wired in one way to pacify those pains now is being rewired of how to express that bliss and peace. Okay, this is how you start living from the soul. And this is the first process that we all have to do before we can organize anything outside of us. Because we have to become self-sustainable as a being before we can create self-sustainable lifestyle, self-sustainable relationships. You see what I'm saying? Okay, we have to become this, because if you still have that belief, which is memory, you're going to be living from the memory. That belief is like a film, and a projector of your consciousness going to create everything what's in those beliefs, right? So we go through life, and the game is to turn that coal into a diamond. Okay. Move from trying to survival of the idea that is erroneous to creativity and playfulness. That's what the soul wants to do. And the only purpose of an ego that was before is that as you transmute that coal into diamond, you needed that coal in order to get that diamond. And you'll be able to be in this reality with the negative energy all around you and not having a problem about it. You'll be able to transmute it. And that's the awesomeness about that type of soul. Okay? That's wisdom, that crystal that you're creating, wisdom. And I assume that that crystal is being formed really the way it's going to be. It all depends on how you play this game. Okay? But from there, you're going to start living from the truth. Okay? Your ideas are going to be different. Most of the time, the thoughts are not going to be running. gonna be silent. But when they come with inspiration and assertiveness. Yes, that's exactly what I need to do next. Um, so from the memory of the belief, you start living. You start living from the spontaneity of the truth, because truth is kind of alive, right? It's not fixed. Belief is always fixed. That's artificial. That's technology. You create it's a code and it's a program. But the truth is adaptable and is spontaneous. This is why, like, you can sit in a so-called unknown, in that bliss and peace by yourself, and from that unknown, boom, springs the insight about the action that you need to take. And that is the difference between living from the ego and living from the soul. But as I'm saying, this is the process that we have to go through. Okay, now it is absolutely worth it. And you see, because the more I'm watching my consciousness, the more I'm starting to see that there is indeed a video game. And it has a beautiful structure. It has the concept of time and infinity. Um, its consciousness is beautifully structured computer. And you are the computer. And you are the game. You are the programmer. And you are the player. Okay? You are all of it. This is why sometimes one part of you can be referring to another part of you. But the danger, for example, when people talk about God, they may create an image of God as a sort of like outside of them. But there's nothing outside of you. Everything is consciousness, and everything that you see, you are projecting. Not realizing that the God is not external, that is internal, is that the very same thing that projects the whole entire reality. That projector, that computer, is what God is. And you as a soul may be identified, towards one way or the other, in terms of, like, gender, right? One soul may be polarized more towards love. Another soul may be polarized more towards wisdom. That's like more masculine soul, more feminine soul, But in the end, then of course we play the character, which is the body. Could be the male and the female, and so on. These are all different level of identities. But what I'm trying to say here is that everything is right here. When there's one part of consciousness wants to talk to another part of consciousness, there is no distance between it. Okay? So there's this play. One part of consciousness, interacting with other parts of consciousness. There's this dance that's happening. But I think it's also important to understand that it's a part of you. But it's totally fine to identify with one part of consciousness and have interaction with another part of consciousness as well, right? That's you playing the game. or participating in a dance. As long as you do not create a belief about it, as long as you actually feel the truth of it. Because have a belief in God is not God. But actually digging through that call all the way and discovering that thing that where before there was a pain and pressure, now there's this peace and bliss. Now you are in union with God, if you want to say it that way, right? But we call this another way of saying you discover a different I. You discover a different I. As a soul, you are that crystal. But the light that's being shined through is also you. You're also that bliss and you're also that peace as well. So that's basically what's behind all that. That suffering is actually sustaining that pain, right? There is a saying basically, a acute or temporary pain is preferable over the prolonged suffering. And that's what's supposed to be, the code of every man. And so if you feel that pain coming up, or you go into it and dig it all the way to that pain from that belief that says go and do that addiction, and you say, well, I'm going to look at where it's come from. You find the anxiety, you find the fear, you find the pain, and you go through it. You say, I want to see what's behind it. And you go through it, it disappears forever. Okay? The same type is never coming back. And then you discover something behind it. You discover the truth that is now as part of you. That no one can take it away from you. No one can change it. The diamond, once it's formed, it's it. You cannot rearrange the diamond back into the coal. Okay? And so that's what you find behind that. And I speak about this specific process because I'm not speaking a lot about manifestation like a lot of people are speaking about manifestation, because I do not want to condone manifestation from the ego, because that is going to be creating just more mischief. Okay? That's just going to, I'm saying, even people say like, well, I want to have a specific person or whatever. They still that manifest from the ego. Even if they get that person, then everybody else is suffering because of that. It's just not going to work. The point of it all is that if you're done growing your ego, and like I said in previous video, you're going to know when you're done growing your ego when it's going to stop working, when your addictions or to things, or the things that you are used before to cope with your addictions no longer works. That's when you hit the rock bottom, and that's where you cannot run away anymore, and you're going to have to face it, right? And but anyway, if you're listening to me, you probably have hit the rock bottom. You probably don't want to pacify those ego structures within you. So those within you, with those beliefs, you probably want now to figure out what's the way forward from here. And like I said, the only way forward is your attention and your awareness. Courage and surrender. Those two faculties, that is the only way. Really, it's not going to be even my words, nothing. It's going to be, are you facing it? Are you sitting and looking at it, feeling it, and putting all your focus, all your attention to the source of it. Are you doing that? And eventually, kind of spoiler alert, not only that you're going to be focused there to see what's behind it, you're going to be remaining there after all this. This is going to be your identity. The thing that you were running away from, that pain, is going to morph into that bliss, and you're going to be that bliss. This is who you're going to be. So be prepared to keep your attention there forever, because you're not going to want to move away your attention from something that feels like bliss. At first, you may want to move away your attention to something that feels like pain, but once you put your attention fully, pain turns into bliss. And the pressure as well, like if you feel depressed, look for the source of it, and you will find the pressure somewhere. And you, instead of courage, which is your attention, you give awareness, you give it space, and so that pressure starts dissipating, because that pressure is lying to you. It may say a lot of things like it's a doubt, okay? It's either pain or a doubt, and saying, well, that's not gonna work, or like, what's the point of it? That's what it's doing. And you do that with awareness. Attention and awareness is the only tools you have. Like, if I could communicate anything, it's that point in the circle. You start from there, okay? And basically this message is basically trying to tell you how this came about and what's the way forward, and that there is no quick fix solutions, okay? Also, you can say also you can say the birth process, right? It's painful, but it has to be done. And once it starts, you cannot stop. And this is the type of mental preparation that you have to have. Okay? I wish there was another way. I wish there was a pill. I wish it was a baller. I wish it was a little bit taller. But there isn't. And it's not bad news. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and say that, okay, I'm gonna obviously say straight up. The birth process, right? Well, I'm a man, I never experienced the birth process, but I've experienced something what would be like. I can kind of relate to it. You see, like, how the hell do you kind of relate to that? As I was going through these transitions, it really was, the thought and an idea was that, like, this is giving birth, okay? This is like giving birth. It was not physical, but it was a lot like it. And so in that sense I can relate, okay? I can relate to that fear that you're about to go through pain, and through that feeling that you cannot stop it, you're just gonna have to go for it, which requires courage and surrender. And women go through that in life, but men tend to avoid that. But men should go through that as well, not physically, but emotionally, with their egos. They basically have to give birth to their soul. So, but the truth is that if you build up enough courage and enough surrender, the birth can be most ecstatic type of experience. That's the truth. That's not, you know, um, I'm not making this up. This is the truth. Because what could be pain, it could be turned into ecstasy. What's the pressure, it could be turned into the stillness. This is just physics or metaphysics, okay? And um, that's what really people or women who give birth supposed to be learning, is how to have ecstatic experience during birth, okay? And so if you prepare yourself in this sense, this alchemy, that's what's going to be like for you too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that just because there's this pain, it's only pain until you're fully faced it. Then it stops being pain. And that pressure, it's only pressure until you fully surrender to it. That's when it stops being pressure. And you may say, well, that seems like a bit inhuman. That like what's supposed to be pain is now bliss. What's supposed to be pressure now is stillness or peace. Well, that's right. In that moment, when you give birth to your soul, you're not the same type of being as you were before. You're actually now becoming a real boy. The story of Pinocchio, um, that is an example of how ego wanted to become a soul. And this is why I'm saying that we don't come here with the soul already. We come here to build it. We come here to build that diamond. That's our creation. We're creating these souls. Okay? And until this process is finished, the soul is not finished. And I would assume, like, if we were to be gods, we're just collecting these beautiful gems, and they're all unique and they're all different. It's like, oh, this is when I was this, this is when I was this. And we probably have infinite number of these gems collected through all these experiences. So, God is a gem collector, and each soul is a gem, and you are it. All right. See you in the next one. Peace.